The woman standing at this door did not live in the house, and the people inside had never seen her before. It was around 10:45 on the night of April 21st, 2024 in Hillsboro, Oregon, and she had walked up to a stranger's home, knocked, and waited outside as the security camera recorded her. For a few seconds, it is not clear why she is there. Then another person enters the frame. The man picks her up and begins carrying her away from the house while she struggles, reaches toward the door, and repeatedly screams for someone to help her. The entire moment lasts only a few seconds, but it gave the homeowner enough to understand that this was not someone willingly leaving with him. The homeowner later told police that the family did not recognize either person and had only discovered what happened after reviewing the Blink camera recording. By then, the woman and the man were already gone. Investigators believed they had left in a white pickup truck, possibly an extended or crew cab model, but they still had no names and no way of knowing whether the woman was safe. In the early hours of April 22nd, the homeowner contacted police and detectives began treating the footage as a possible kidnapping. Later that day, Hillsboro police released still images from the recording and asked the public to help identify both people. The video quickly spread online, but as more people saw it, another question began to emerge. Was this a woman being taken by a stranger, or did the two people already know each other? Police eventually confirmed that the woman and the man knew each other, which meant this was not a random attack on someone walking through the neighborhood. However, that did not change what the camera had recorded. The woman had been carried away against her will while screaming for help, and detectives still needed to find her before they could know what happened after the truck left the area. By the early morning of April 23rd, police had identified both people and located the woman unharmed. The man was taken into custody and charged with kidnapping before being held at the Washington County Jail. Authorities also said there was no continuing threat to the public, although the names of both the victim and the suspect were withheld. No major public update about the final court outcome has been released since the arrest, and that leaves the question of what could be the motive behind the abduction. The object falling through the distance in that recording is a single-engine turboprop aircraft, and only seconds after it passed through the camera's view, it crashed directly into a home in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. The footage was recorded shortly after noon on March 29, 2025. While two people lived inside the house the plane was descending toward. The aircraft was a Cicada TBM 700A piloted by 63-year-old Terry Dolan, a senior executive at U.S. Bank. He had flown from Florida, stopped in Des Moines to refuel, and was approaching Minneapolis-Anoka County Blaine Airport when something changed during the final stage of the flight. By then, Terry had contacted the tower, received the local weather information, and been cleared to land. But shortly afterward, the aircraft began descending rapidly and turning away from what had been a controlled approach. Flight tracking data later showed the plane accelerating as its rate of descent increased, while controllers issued low-altitude warnings and received no response. The doorbell camera captured the final part of that descent, with the aircraft appearing nose down and rotating as it fell toward the neighborhood. Although investigators have not confirmed exactly why control was lost, but the sequence happened quickly enough that there was no warning for the people inside the home. Kenneth Tobeckman was inside the kitchen when the plane struck. He later described hearing a loud impact as the lights went out and sparks and smoke filled the house, but he managed to reach the kitchen door and escape within seconds. His wife, Mary Butler, had been outside walking their dog when she heard the crash. Luckily, both homeowners made it out without being injured, but the aircraft and much of the wreckage had fallen into the basement, and the fire spread through the house almost immediately. Their cat did not survive. Terry Dolan was the only person aboard the aircraft, and he was killed in the crash. For Mary and Kenneth, the house they had lived in for roughly 2 decades was destroyed, leaving them displaced while the investigation and eventual rebuilding process began. The National Transportation Safety Board eventually examined the engine, airframe, and flight control system, but its preliminary work found no clear mechanical failure before impact. In fact, weather around the airport included a low cloud ceiling, and investigators also noted a significant possibility of icing at the altitude where the plane had been flying. However, neither icing nor any other explanation has been confirmed as the cause. By spring 2026, Mary and Kenneth were rebuilding the home and hoped to return later that year. As of the latest available reports, the NTSB investigation remained open, and the reason Terry Dolan's aircraft suddenly fell out of a cleared approach had not been determined.
You don't know what I have or haven't done to him. You don't know that I've called him or said anything to him.
At first, the man entering this house does not appear to be forcing his way inside. He simply opens the front door and walks into the living room, almost as though he expects to be there. But the family's reaction makes it clear almost immediately that nobody inside recognizes him. The house was occupied by several family members, and the father responded within seconds. He drew a handgun, ordered the stranger back outside, and told someone in the room to call 911, while keeping his attention fixed on the doorway. The man did not argue or make any sudden move toward the family. After standing there briefly, he turned around and walked back out through the same door. The entire confrontation was over in less than a minute, and luckily, nobody inside the house was injured. No shots were fired, and once the stranger began leaving, the father lowered the weapon rather than following him outside or escalating the situation further.
Gunpoint. Get the fuck out.
I have a gentleman walking
Goodbye.
away. My husband has him at gunpoint.
He's walking away. I'm putting the gun down.
He's walking away. They're going to stay away.
He's going.
What makes the entry look so casual is also what allowed it to happen. The front door had been closed, but it was apparently unlocked, so the man was able to enter without breaking anything or making enough noise to warn the family before he was already inside. But the footage does not explain why he chose that house or whether he had mistaken it for another address. The clip began circulating widely online in March 2026, although the timestamp visible on the camera reads February 25th, 2023. It is unclear whether the recording was several years old when it was shared, or whether the camera's date had simply been set incorrectly. By then, the video had already spread across Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, and other platforms, usually framed as a home defense encounter. Despite how widely the footage circulated, no verified police report, arrest, or public identification of the stranger has been found. So for now, the video ends exactly where the family's camera ends, with an unidentified man walking away from a house he had entered without permission, and no confirmed explanation for why he went inside. The car moving through that neighborhood was traveling more than twice the posted speed limit, and only seconds after it passed the camera, it tore through the front of a family home in Katy, Texas. But the people inside had no warning that a vehicle was coming toward them. The crash happened on the evening of June 19th, 2026, while 76-year-old Martha Avila was inside the home she shared with her daughter, son-in-law, and 3 grandchildren. Martha was in a room near the front of the house when the Tesla broke through the wall, leaving her pinned beneath the vehicle, debris, or objects displaced by the impact. Her son-in-law, Justin Barber, was also injured, but luckily, the 3 children were not physically hurt. Martha was airlifted for emergency treatment, but she did not survive.
Martha, I honestly don't know what I'm going to do without her.
My kids never knew what a daycare was. You know, she was the babysitter, and they were safe. And whether I worked in that office or remote, my mom was here with us taking care of it.
The Tesla Model 3 was being driven by 44-year-old Michael Butler, who had been making DoorDash deliveries that evening. Investigators found no rain, hazardous road conditions, or obvious obstruction that would explain why the car failed to complete the turn and continued toward the house. So attention quickly shifted to what Butler said had happened inside the vehicle. Butler told investigators that Tesla's full self-driving supervised system had been engaged. He said he had interacted with the touchscreen to change the music and then passed out before the crash. However, medical testing reportedly found no evidence of a seizure, stroke, heart attack, alcohol, or illegal drugs that would explain a sudden loss of consciousness. And once investigators examined the car's electronic data, the sequence began to look very different. The data showed that the assisted driving system had been active, but it was overridden when the accelerator pedal was pressed fully to the floor. From there, the Tesla accelerated to approximately 73 miles per hour on a residential street with a 30-mile-per-hour limit. Investigators also found no brake application during the final moments before the car entered the home. That meant the vehicle was not simply continuing under automated control. According to the preliminary findings, a full accelerator input had manually overridden the system before impact. For a while, authorities held off on filing charges while they collected the Tesla's data and reviewed Butler's phone and medical records. But in early July 2026, Butler was eventually arrested and charged with manslaughter, with bond set at $150,000. Court filings also referenced earlier internet searches on his phone about Tesla's full self-driving system being too timid or not aggressive enough, although the significance of those searches will ultimately be argued as the criminal case moves forward. Meanwhile, Martha's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against both Butler and Tesla.
Went to the hospital to check on my mom, and then they told us they couldn't save her. We came back, and we told the kids. And then the kids are devastated, and then we brought them back to the hotel, and we've been here since. So I'm still wearing the same clothes from yesterday.
The lawsuit alleges that Butler acted negligently and that Tesla's driver assistance systems contain design and warning defects. Tesla's position, however, is that the driver remains responsible and that pressing the accelerator manually overrides the system. The NTSB's preliminary findings established the speed, the accelerator input, and the absence of braking, but the agency had not yet released its final probable cause determination. As of now, Butler's manslaughter case and the family's lawsuit were still pending, while the federal investigation had not yet determined whether any part of the vehicle's system contributed beyond the driver's recorded accelerator input. The aircraft falling into that residential field was an experimental Hummingbird helicopter, and when the camera recorded the impact, 2 pilots were still inside. The crash happened on the afternoon of April 29, 2024, in Spring Branch, Texas, only a short distance from the air park where the helicopter had taken off. The flight was supposed to be brief. 62-year-old Richard Scott Herr and 43-year-old Kevin Lee Berry were heading toward the nearby River Crossing Club, where they were expected to drop golf balls onto the driving range as part of a charity event. Interestingly, the rear door had been removed to make the drop possible, and investigators later found the unused golf balls still inside the wreckage, which showed the helicopter had crashed before the event could begin. Richard was a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel with thousands of hours of flight experience, while Kevin was also a licensed pilot connected to a local flight school. As for Richard's aircraft, he had assembled the helicopter himself from a kit and had flown that particular model for hundreds of hours. However, this was not a standard factory-built helicopter. It was registered as an experimental amateur-built aircraft and used an automotive-derived engine rather than a conventional certified helicopter engine. At the same time, people near the crash site later described hearing the engine sputtering and coughing shortly before the helicopter came down. Its recorded flight path also suggested the pilots may have been trying to return toward the air park or find somewhere nearby to land. Tragically, the open grass field field in front of the home may have been their best available option, but the helicopter struck the ground hard before exploding into flames. Both Richard and Kevin were killed, although fortunately, nobody inside the surrounding homes or on the ground was injured. The fire destroyed much of the helicopter, including large parts of its engine and fuel system, which made it difficult for investigators to determine exactly what had failed. Still, the witness descriptions, recorded flight path, and wreckage evidence all pointed toward the same central event. The engine had lost power while the helicopter was still in the air. During the investigation, the NTSB learned that Richard had previously contacted the kit manufacturer because he was concerned that ethanol in automotive fuel might be damaging the helicopter's fuel bladder and restricting the fuel lines. The manufacturer had offered a replacement bladder, but investigators could not confirm whether that work was ever completed. However, because the fuel system had been heavily damaged in the fire, the NTSB could not prove that ethanol damage caused the engine failure. After months of analysis, the NTSB eventually completed its investigation and determined that the helicopter suffered a total loss of engine power, forcing the pilots to attempt an emergency landing. But the damage from the impact and fire left the reason for that power loss undetermined. On the morning of November 19, 2024, a neighbor's doorbell camera in Bethel, Ohio, recorded an entire house being torn apart in a matter of seconds. The force was so severe that the blast scattered debris across Vicjoy Drive and was powerful enough that some neighbors initially thought something had struck their own homes. But inside the house, this had begun as a routine call to repair a furnace that was not producing heat. 77-year-old Barry Stone lived in the house with 52-year-old Helen Evans, who was known to her family as Lucy. That morning, a 19-year-old technician from Mott's Heating and Cooling had arrived after they reported that the propane furnace was not working. While inspecting the system, he found a leaking pipe fitting, shut off the gas, repaired the connection, and attempted to air out the house before restoring power. However, there was another problem inside that made the leak extremely difficult to detect. Inside the home, the property contained dozens of cats, and investigators later described an overwhelming ammonia odor from the animal waste. Conditions were so extreme that one technician said the smell burned his nose, which meant he could not detect the odor normally added to propane as a warning. Because propane is heavier than air, some of the leaking gas had remained collected in the basement even after the house was ventilated. At the time, however, the technician believed the repair had been completed and the area was safe enough to restart the furnace. When he switched the furnace back on, the ignition system set off the propane that was still inside the house. The explosion leveled most of the structure, and the technician later told investigators that he escaped by climbing over a fallen beam while the building burned around him.
You fixed the PVC pipe,
the leak, and I fixed everything. I didn't want to go turn the furnace on and everything blew up.
when you went back down, could you smell any
No, so
gas or anything?
did you see all the cats that were over there?
I didn't go to the actual scene.
So at the actual location, there was about 30 or 40 cats living in the house, and the carpet was hard and sticky. See, it was so hard to smell anything over the smell of ammonia, like it was burning my nostrils. It was so bad.
Though injured, he suffered burns but remained conscious and was taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, Barry Stone and Helen Evans were killed at the scene. Even after containment, fire crews from several departments stayed at the property to search the debris and deal with areas that continued to burn. Dozens of cats had also been living in and around the home. Many died in the explosion and fire, while several others were taken to veterinarians and local animal rescue groups. Sadly, a dog was also found dead inside the wreckage. For more than a year, investigators worked to determine whether the explosion had been caused by a crime, a faulty repair, or an accidental chain of events. Eventually, the Ohio State Fire Marshal concluded that propane had remained inside the basement and ignited when the furnace was switched back on. The heavy ammonia odor from the animals had masked the warning smell, leaving the technician unable to tell that gas was still present. In February 2026, the explosion was officially ruled accidental, and prosecutors determined and there was not enough evidence to file criminal charges. OSHA later cited the technician's employer for deficiencies in its propane safety training. Despite his efforts, the final investigation found that the technician had repaired the visible leak and tried to ventilate the house, but when he restored power to the furnace, enough propane was still trapped in the basement to destroy the home. If you stayed till here, thank you so much. If you have any suggestions or a case you want me to cover next, just drop it in the comments.